With me on the phone is Carol Upshur. Carol's been in this business, the financial services business that is, for 14 years. She's recently moved companies, so she's been with a new company for about 10 months. She confesses that she hasn't been particularly good at referrals over the years, although has certainly had some success in this business to last this long. Carol, thank you for being on the call with me.
Thank you for having me.
Good. You bet. And you attended a webinar that I did recently for NAFA, and you've had some success since then. But before we go to that, if you don't mind, what was your relationship to the referral process? What were you doing, if anything, or maybe you weren't doing anything and got lucky from time to time?
Well, I wasn't doing anything. I mean, in particular, people would just give me names here and there. And then 2 years ago, when I started with the company that I was at before I came here, they were deaf on telling you, oh, you need to get referrals, you need to get referrals. And I would ask people for referrals, and they would tell me they would give them to me, and I just never got them. And I just felt like, I literally almost get sick when I used to be like this on the phone, and I got over it, but I just almost throw up when I have to ask for referrals. I just don't ask for referrals. It feels awful. And I don't know why. It just, because people call me for everything else. They call me when they need everything from a doctor to they got a headache and they need to know how to get rid of it. And they call me for everything. People call me to refer people to them all the time, and I'm constantly referring people. But I've never been good at getting people to refer them to me.
So I think one of the things that's going on there, just the way that you describe the fact that people are talking to you, they have a headache, they call you for all kinds of other things. It sounds like you have pretty good relationships with a lot of your clients, and that good relationship is enough to get some activity, referral activity from them. It's just not enough to build your career on, and so I guess you've always been feeling maybe a little guilty that you weren't as proactive as you probably could have been. Is that an accurate statement?
Yeah, and see, I really was, for the last few years, I had been part-time in the business, and it's only been since 2012 that I started full-time in the financial services business. So it wasn't as critical then, but, I'm good on the phone, but I don't want to spend my whole life having to get new people and running through lists and being on the phone all the time. And I really want to have a business that's referral-based, almost totally referral-based.
And you can. So talk to me about the webinar. What did you hear? What resonated with you that helped spur you into some new behavior that apparently has had some success already?
There were several points that you made, and I thought, I can't do all this at one time. So I honed in on the one thing that is driving me in this business, which is getting to young couples. I don't know how much time I have, but we went through 7 years ago. We went through my husband. I had been at home for the majority of our marriage, and I had just worked part-time because I homeschooled 4 children for 10 years. And so 7 years ago, my husband, after 21 years, was let go from his job a year and a half from retirement. So he was forced into an early retirement, and I, like I said, had not worked full-time since 1988, actually. So I ended up going back doing 2 part-time jobs. We put the kids in school, but it was a devastating experience. We lost the house, we lost the cars, we lost everything. And had I done what I knew somewhat to do, I'm more deep into the financial services end of it now, and I have more experience. I was doing a lot of final expense and that kind of thing. But now I'm actually doing financial services and working on securities and that kind of thing. But I don't want anybody to ever have to go through what we went through again. If we had done the planning that I'm teaching people to do now, it would have been a blip on the radar. It would have been a hiccup, and we would have continued going without a bump. But as it was, we lost the house, we lost the cars, and we ended up moving, which ultimately turned out to be a good move for us. But that's what's driving me. So it really struck me when you said in the webinar to talk to people about why, basically your why. Why are you doing this? And I don't want my children to be illiterate about these things. And I think too many times, because it tends to be kind of complicated sounding language, when you start talking about, insurance and financial services, people tend to shy away from it. And so I have just started talking to people from the heart, just sitting down. Instead of trying to sit down and going through my spiel, I started just sitting down talking to them. And I share my story with them. And I'm telling them I'm hardly having to ask for the referrals now. But I'm getting people who are just, we sat down with a doctor the other day, and he gave us the name of his attorney and his accountant who deal with doctors. Huge for centers of influence, But I'm discovering, there was something you also said in your webinar that disturbed me quite a bit, and that,
in a good way, or
well, it didn't feel very good, but it was in a good way, because I needed to be disturbed in that area, because you were talking about people and reasons why people don't get referrals. And as you were clicking through all of the reasons why people typically don't get referrals, I was clicking through in my head, okay, is this you? Is this you? Is this you? And the one thing that really kind of hit me through the heart a little bit was when you said, do you think that you're not worthy of getting the referrals? And that bothered me, because I was like, I don't think that I feel like that, but I act like I do. I didn't consciously feel like I don't deserve to get them, but there's something in me that backs away from asking people for referrals. They trust me. They're trusting me with all their vital personal health information and their personal financial information, and they're showing me their scars, for heaven's sakes. But why? Why would I not? I've really, and I'm not quite sure I have an answer to that yet, but it's just been on my mind. Why would you hesitate in asking them for a referral? And I'm still not quite, I don't quite have the answer to that yet, but I just started doing it anyway.
Perfect. So it's kind of like felt the fear, but did it anyway.
Yeah, that's basically the only way to get through fear. Is do it.
Well, it is. And so I want to really piggyback on what you said. I'm just so glad that you took that why to heart. Now, you have a very compelling story of something you actually went through, and I am so glad you are now telling that and sharing that and talking from the heart, because it does a few things. We know that people make a decision to work with us. The buying decision, if you will, is an emotional decision. They need to feel they can trust us and the advice we're giving, and that we will deliver on what we say, et cetera, et cetera. So this is a trust relationship. So the way you connect with that emotional side of the brain is very important. And just talking about return on investment and just talking about a cash value and all the various other things that people in this business talk about. Well, I'm not saying that's not important. Of course it's important. But they will make that decision to work with you and trust you and follow your recommendations if they trust you, if they like you, if they believe you. So what you're doing by sharing your why are you in this business? Why are you more excited about this business now than ever before? Is your personal story. And I've been trying to get people for years to do this, and a lot of folks are reluctant because they feel, well, it's all about me, it's not about them. Well, yeah, but people resonate with story, right? It's story
well,
that... Go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you
No,
just made
good.
me think of something, another part of that. The other part that I didn't tell you about was that that was 7 years ago that happened, but in 2012, we lost 8 people between the months of April and December. And the first one was my closest friend who was doing the business with me, and she was riding her bike on the bike path, and her heart stopped. She had no history of heart problems, nothing, but she was dead before she hit the ground. And the last 2 were, and I've been able to add this to my why, because this is another thing that has driven me, because I've seen it bear out. I had a friend, they were our closest friends, and she and her husband and 3 daughters, and then the niece and nephew were visiting for Christmas in that year, and their house caught on fire. The nephew discovered the fire at 4 o'clock in the morning, and the husband and the oldest daughter did not make it out. They died.
Oh, Lord.
Now, the same week,
this call is getting very depressing,
Yes,
Carol.
no, but the 3 days right after that, another friend who had mouth cancer that I had begged him to let me get him in a membership in an association with one of our companies that we had that would have given him a guarantee issue policy. It only had a 30-day waiting period. They decided to wait till they came back from the clinic they were going to. 36 days later, he died. Well, the first couple had a wonderful amount of insurance. He was able to take care of the family. She was able to buy a home, and it made their family just so much more financially stable. The second couple, she's cleaning floors because he had nothing. And I begged her to let me. I was even willing to get the membership for them because it included a $25,000 whole life policy that was a guarantee issue, and it only had a 30-day waiting. He only had to stay alive for 30 days. So I've seen both sides of it with my clients and with my friends. And that's the other piece that I didn't share with you. But that just makes me even more persistent that they've got to do something. They can't just do nothing.
Right. So when you're talking with prospects and clients, it's you've seen it, you have passion about it, but it's not false passion. It's real passion. Now, some folks listening to this interview thinking, well, I never had that happen. Well, yeah, luckily, and you've got to get in touch with the value, and you've got to get in touch with the why, so you can talk about the why. So it activates the emotional side of the brain, if you will, from a sales thought process. But there's another thing going on here as well. We found through the research that the people who give referrals are the people who feel engaged in the relationship. They feel engaged with the advisor, the agent, the practice, the business, whatever industry we're in. It's a sense of engagement. And so when people are loyal clients and feel engaged with the people, those are the people who give referrals. And what you're showing through this conversation of why is the fact that you can actually create the sense of engagement very quickly in a relationship. It can happen in the very first appointment. It doesn't have to take a client service model over 3 years, to create the sense of engagement. It can happen very quickly if you bring the right stuff to the appointment, talk about the work you're doing in the right way. And with emphasis on it has to be genuine, it has to be real, it can't just be a sales technique you're running on somebody, because people can tell the difference. So it sounds like, now had you been talking about your why and telling the story before the webinar, or was it really the webinar that somehow gave you permission to start having this conversation?
Ironically, I had not shared that with a lot of the people that I was sitting with. as a rule. I mean, some of the people that are my clients that I know, some of them actually walked through that walk with us as we went through that with my family, but others I really had not. I had told the story of my friends who were the opposite ends of the, as a matter of fact, those last 3 people were all buried on the same day. And so it was such an incredible loss, but it was just even worse to watch my friend that I had tried to help and to know that they didn't have anything, and they made the decision to go to this clinic, and they were there 36 days, and he died on the plane landing to come back home. So it was just a horrible flip-flop to look from one family to the other and see one having the money for her kids to go to school, having an income for the rest of her life, having a home that's paid for, very nice 3,600 square foot home, brick, beautiful home, and then to see the other living upstairs in her mom's house, she has like an upper and lower, and so they're living in the upper part, and she's scrubbing floors to make ends meet and dependent on the government.
So when you talk about this, and I know you're really just starting to get into it now, so you haven't done a ton of times, but when you talk about some of your story, what happens to the energy in the room? How do the prospects react? What's the dynamic going on there?
Well, and I've only had a couple weeks of being able to see it, and so I really am excited to try this over a long period of time. But what I'm noticing is that for especially the clients that I don't really know at all, and they might not be my personality type, they might be kind of an opposite personality from me, I'm discovering it's not as hard to get them engaged in the conversation, because when I tell that story, everybody knows somebody who's been through that. Or they will share, I find that they will share things that have happened to them, or, oh, my aunt died and we had to pass the plate because nobody had the money to bury, the family had to all chip in to bury them, So I'll get stories like that. But I've discovered that it changed something inside me. I guess you'd call it a little bit of a paradigm shift, because in sharing it, it wasn't that I was afraid to share it or I didn't want anybody to know that we had been through all that, but I'd never really seen the need to share it with my clients, and I had always just basically not talked about myself when I would sit down with the client. I would sit down with the list of what I'd been trained to do first and what I was supposed to do, and it was all well and good, but I didn't spend a lot of time talking about myself or how much experience I had in the industry or anything like that. I didn't do that. But now when I do it, people, they're just like, oh, wow. And then you had talked about a lot of different things, and I kind of smushed some of them together. And so I got a sheet from one of my trainers here, and it's a sheet that now whenever I'm writing their application out, I put that sheet in front of them, and it's an emergency contact sheet. And so I started, in the event, because we have a lot of people that we can't pay out claims to because we can't find them and they never gave us their Social Security number. So I'll ask them, in the event that I can't reach you or that the company needs to reach you, who can we call? Can you give me the names of 3 people that you trust that we can call?
Right.
And then we ask them that, and then I ask after I go through this little thing, and then at the end there's room for them to put people that they would like to refer me to. Then I ask them, is it okay for me to contact them and let them know that and I tell them, I also like the part of the webinar where you said, tell them what you're going to say to their people. So I started saying, I promise you, I will never embarrass you. And they kind of laugh. That kind of, breaks the tension, But I just say, I promise, this is what I'm going to say to them when I call. And I just basically tell them that so-and-so thought that you could benefit from knowing me and what I do. I've been working with him on some things, and she just thought that it would be good for you to know what I do. So when can I get 15 minutes to sit down with you?
Right. You know, you are doing so much right in this. I could talk for hours about the things that you're doing right, and you're just waking up to the fact that you're doing some of these things
I
right.
know.
And we could talk about the actual asks for referrals and tweak it and make it better in certain ways, but what allows that to work is what you did on the first end. So I got one more question, then we'll wrap it up here, because some people are probably thinking, well, how does she bring it up in the first place? I mean, what is her segue, or what is her opening statement that allows her to get into this story?
Well, that's interesting, because now that goes back to my spiel that I've been taught to do. Mm-hmm. Because what we were trained to do when I came with this company, which was different than any other company I had been with, mm-hmm. is they taught us how to do the financial needs analysis. And I had been taught that before by mm-hmm. several different companies, but this time when we open up, we are trained to say, now you may have, many people will have questions when we first get started and we start talking about sitting down to talk about this. So, and some of those questions might be, and it's actually in our spiel book, it's actually in the presentation book, who am I? Who's my company? Who do I represent? Right. And it has 3 basic questions. And so they train us to set us up for referrals, which I was doing, but it wasn't working. But they train us to say, now, as we go through this process, when we get to the point where we start to do the financial needs analysis, I tell them, now, as we go through this, you may think of other people. There might be some names that might pop into your mind of people who need to know what we're doing, and who need to be able to kind of do what we're doing. And so I'd ask you to just jot those down. But I had been stopping short of asking them to jot it down. And I was setting myself up to get the referral, but I wasn't asking for the referral. Mm-hmm. So in the beginning, when I say, who am I, instead of talking about, I have 14 years in the business, and I have expertise in this and expertise in that, I traded that for my story.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is so good, and so now it's starting to work, and
yeah,
that's it. That's what you want to do, is start producing results, and you're going to get better and better and better at this. So, if I could just summarize what I've heard is, find out, why you're in this business. What do you believe about this business? Make sure that as you talk about yourself and your company, usually a little, at the very beginning, because they want to know, all right, who is this person really? You talk about that, and you can even say things like, I work for this company, and here's what we do, basically. And let me tell you why I do. Let me tell you why I'm in this business, or let me tell you why I'm more excited about the work I do than ever before. And you share this personal story. A lot of folks, their story may not be as dramatic, but it still has the same impact in that you're speaking from the heart. You're being real to them. You're not just a salesperson sitting in their living room or office. And then everything gets easier. They feel engaged with you, and even if you don't ask for referrals, you will often get referrals without asking, because they just start to really see the value and like you, trust you, want to help mm-hmm. other people, and want to help you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so, the last 19 referrals I got, that's how I got them. They gave them to me. I didn't ask them.
Right.
They
Beautiful.
started just spouting off names.
So I called the webinar. I called the webinar "Getting Referrals Without Asking." I guess it was an accurate name.
It was a very accurate name, and I'm so grateful that I joined. I had never joined NAIFA. I just joined NAIFA about 4 months ago, because when I came on with the company, they said, you need to join NAIFA. And so I joined. And I've been active. I've been going to the meetings and everything, and I've gotten so much out of them. And I'm actually going to be signing up for your program, because I love it. I just haven't gotten around to it yet. But
we'll get you around to it. So
yeah.
Well, good. So Carol Upshur, thank you so much for sharing your story with others, because hopefully they will learn and benefit from it, and start growing their success as you have. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I just appreciate you and what you're doing.